okay, if the plans for this universe really are to make it into a horror fairy tale universe, give me the Pinocchio movie where he uses his nose as a knife. That's what I want to see. Gretel and Hansel is the latest interpretation of the famous fairy tale Hansel and Gretel, focusing on Gretel and Hansel as they are kicked out of their homes, forced into the woods, until they encounter an old lady who's willing to give them all for a price. That's all pretty much say without giving any spoilers to you guys. This is a spoiler-free review. Also, don't forget, if you do want my spoiler thoughts on this movie, once it has had its theatrical release, I will be posting my spoiler review on the podcast channel Film Strippers, so look out for that if you're interested. But alright, getting right to this movie, I gotta be completely honest with you, I had no interest at all in another Hansel and Gretel story. It is one of those IPs that anybody can make a movie about because it's public domain, so me right now, I could take my iPhone, go to the woods, grab two little kids, call them Hansel and Gretel, and I have my movie. And jail time. But of course, this specific fairy tale is ripe for a horror take because it's a witch trying to go after little children and eat them. It's actually pretty funny that this is most commonly a children's tale. And now after having watched the movie, I definitely think there are going to be huge fans of this film. This movie I'm putting in a category I refer to as horror movie wine. It's the type of horror movies that have this really slow pace to them, filled with quiet sounds, beautiful shots, and instead of jump scares, you're fed creepy dialogue. Movies I put in that category that definitely fall suit with this are movies like The Witch, Suspiria, The Babadook, and if you were one of the people who have seen those films and they did nothing for you, this film will most likely not do anything for you either. And when I walk out of movies like this, I have the conversation myself, am I just uncultured swine? Why can't I just take in what the movie was giving me and appreciate its beauty? Because the cinematography for one of this movie is beautiful, man. Some really great shots, and it manages to keep an eerie feeling all throughout the film, where you are a little uncomfortable to what's going on screen. You can sense the paranoia in the characters and what might be happening. And when getting onto the actual characters, the three main leads, Gretel, Hansel, and the witch in this movie, all phenomenal performances. Even Hansel in this movie, played by Samuel Leakey, did a fantastic job of handling some of this dialogue. The back and forth he has with Gretel in this movie, who carries this film perfectly on her shoulders. You might remember her from the It franchise. But in the end, it just comes down to that this is just not my preferred taste of horror movies. And in fact, not trying to insult the movie, I have a hard time calling this a horror movie. It is PG-13, even though I think they managed to get away with a lot of stuff in this movie that could have probably passed it to R. But really, this movie is more metaphoric and is representative of a girl turning into a woman. That coming of age type of story. And I joked around at the beginning of this video that if they're creating this fairy tale horror movie universe like the director has said in given interviews, the movie does plant seeds here and there for openings to what could happen if they were to continue it. And that's one thing I do appreciate when movies build lore and create a universe. I can completely understand why some will come out loving this movie and absolutely praising it. I just won't be one of those, because once the movie had its ending, it just didn't feel as climactic as they were building it up to be, and my interest in the movie just flatlined all throughout, where it never really peaked or even dipped. It just had this consistent, I guess I'm into it feeling. It is miles away though from being the stanky generic January horror movie, and I think that's a win for them. So for Gretel and Hansel, I'm going to give action 1 star. Like I said, this is very slow paced, takes its time, and with that said, there's not a lot of movement or high velocity to the film. Comedy in the movie, I'm going to give it 1 star too. This is meant to set up an eerie atmosphere. With that, you sacrifice the humor in the film. However, Hansel in this movie is pretty funny for the little kid and the things he says, how naive he is to the world around him. Drama in the movie, I'm going to give it 2.5 stars because, like I said, I think they built up nice lore in the film. They took a very refreshing approach to the Hansel and Gretel story, and the coming of age tale to womanhood worked well in my opinion. Horror in the movie, I'm gonna give it 2 stars too. It's very much psychological thriller and it's more of the creepy atmosphere. There are 1 or 2 visuals that might actually make you double take. And suspense of the film, I'm gonna give it 2 stars. That's my one gripe with these slow-paced horror movies, is that the suspense just cannot be that well built because you're creating an easy breeze flow to your film that does not warrant a fast heart rate in the reaction to your audience. Casual fans, I'm gonna give it a C-. Cinephiles, I'm gonna give it a C+. And critically, I'm going to give it a B-. For Gretel and Hansel, just because it was not my type of taste, I recommend you rent it.
That'll do, donkey. that'll do.
That is just my personal opinion on the film, guys. Like I said, this is not a bad movie. This is more of a case where it's not really my cup of tea. But anyways, guys, let me know what you thought of Gretel and Hansel, and if you'll even be going out to check it out this weekend, or if you're like me, where these type of horror movies just don't do it for you. Anything and everything, be sure to like and subscribe. Follow me on Twitter at 3C Film Review. As always, I'm Chris. Take care.